Thank you, everyone. Now, let's move on to the highlights of today's session. It is my honor to introduce our esteemed guest speaker, Attorney Cherry May F. Aguinaldo. She is the acting officer of the Office of the City Election Office of the City of Batak, and he has been actively involved in advocating for voters' education and ensuring a fair and transparent election process in our city. Let us all warmly welcome Attorney Cherry May F. Aguinaldo. Attorney.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So I'm Cherry May F. Aguinaldo, the acting election officer of the city of Batak, and I was tasked to discuss this voter citizenship education. And originally, I was given 45 minutes to discuss on this, but I made this brief for you guys. All right, so let's start. Let's just wait for this slide. Next slide, ma'am. Next slide, please. All right, so we'll start with elections and democracy. So the Constitution guarantees that we are a sovereign people from where all government authority derives. Sovereignty or the power to govern is exercised directly through suffrage and direct democracy instrument and indirectly through officials elected by people as their public servants. Therefore, the will of the people is expressed in a clean, orderly, and honest elections. Next slide, ma'am. So the election process is the cornerstone of a democratic society. So it allows citizens to choose leaders who will represent them and decide policies that affect the entire country. So in the Philippines, there are three major types of elections. Number one, the national elections, the local elections, and of course, the barangay elections. So national elections happen every 6 years where Filipinos elect the president, the vice president, senators, and members of the Speaker of the House. This happens every 3 years with the senators and members of the Speaker of the House. And local elections, this includes the selection of governors, mayors, vice mayors, other officials, and this happen usually every 3 years. And not to forget the barangay elections wherein we elect officials of our respective barangays. Next slide, ma'am. All right. What are the requirements for a person to vote? Number one, you must be at least 18 years old on or before the elections. So, if you are 17 years old and you will turn 18 on May 11, 2025, by the way, our national and local elections will happen on May 12, 2025, you can still register. Basta pagdating ng elections, you are 18 years old na. So you can still vote. And number two, you must be a resident of the Philippines for at least 1 year and 6 months in the place wherein you intend to vote immediately preceding the elections. Next. So you must not be otherwise disqualified by law. So who are those people disqualified to apply or to register as a voter? So if you are insane or incompetent, declared by law, or if you are a person who has been sentenced by final judgment to suffer imprisonment for not less than 1 year, or if you have been adjudged by final judgment by competent court of having committed any crime of disloyalty such as rebellion, sedition, and other crimes against national security, you are disqualified by law to vote. However, after 5 years from the service of sentence, your right to vote may be restored or reacquired. Next slide. And lastly, valid ID to verify or to account for your identity if you are that person who is actually applying as a voter. So why is voting important? Voting is important because it allows you to have a say in the future of the country. It is the most direct way for citizens to influence governance. So when you vote, you help shape decisions and issues like education and healthcare and infrastructure, job creation, and national security. So these decisions impact your life and the lives of others. So your participation is essential. Next slide. As I've mentioned a while ago, voting is a right granted by the Constitution. So it is a constitutional right. It's actually provided under Article 5, Section 1 of the 1987 Constitution. However, voting is a right. As it may seem, it is also a responsibility. So let's break down why voting is important. Number one, voice in the government. Voting gives you the power to choose leaders who represent your interests. So whether it's local infrastructure projects or national policies on education and health, your vote matters in determining who gets to decide on issues of the government. Number two, it hold leaders accountable. Of course, when we vote, we are ensuring that elected officials remain accountable to the people. And those leaders who perform poorly can be voted out on the next elections. And number three, exercise of democracy. Voting ensures that democracy continues to function. By the way, what is democracy? Democracy is a form of government ruled by majority of the people. So when we vote, we are actively participating in democracy and keeping it alive. And on the opposite end, failing to vote can weaken the democratic process. Next slide, ma'am. So in the Philippines, there are several reasons why some eligible voters do not exercise their right to vote. So while the country has a long history of democratic participation, various factors hinder voter turnout. And here are some of the key reasons. Number one, apathy and lack of interest. So many Filipinos, especially the youth, feel disconnected from the political system because they may view politics as irrelevant to their personal lives or believe that it doesn't affect them directly. And also the mindset, my vote won't make a difference. So some voters, particularly in large electoral districts, believe that their individual vote won't significantly affect the outcome, leading to apathy. So voters may feel powerless against the system, thinking that those in power will remain in power regardless of their vote. And also, low engagement among the younger voters like you. So despite being a significant voting bloc, some young Filipinos feel apathetic about politics because they are more focused on their personal lives and social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or any other entertainment and may not see the immediate relevance of voting to their future. So the complexity of political issues or lack of relatable candidates can further discourage them from voting. So number two, disappointment with the political system. Of course, this is corruption and broken promises and the pare-pareho lang sila mindset. So many of us have become disappointed with the political system due to rampant corruption and the perception that elected officials often fail to deliver on campaign promises. So this creates a sense of futility where people feel that voting won't lead to a meaningful change. And the common sentiment also among Filipinos, among us, pare-pareho lang sila, that no matter who we vote, no matter who wins in the elections, the political landscape will remain unchanged. So this perception that politicians from different parties are all corrupt and self-serving leads to voter disappointment or disillusionment. Number three, voter fatigue. So in the Philippines, we hold a lot of elections. We have the national elections, the local elections, and the barangay elections, and we hold this regularly, leading to voter fatigue. So the constant need to participate in multiple elections can make us feel overwhelmed or indifferent over time. And also, prolonged and often chaotic campaign periods can also cause voters to lose interest. So by the time the election arrives, voters are too fatigued to care about the results. So pagod na tayo mag-participate sa elections. Kasi ang dami, we have the nationals, the local and the barangay. And sa Mindanao, marami rin silang special elections. Number four, logistical and accessibility issue. Of course, we have this geographical barrier and election day complications. So in remote areas, especially in the provinces and in mountain regions, access to polling stations can be difficult. So some Filipinos live far from voting centers, and lack of transportation or poor infrastructure can make it inconvenient or costly to vote. And during the election days, issues such as long lines, malfunctioning voting machines, and disorganized polling stations discourage some people from voting. So these logistical problems can make the voting process feel burdensome to the voters. Next slide, ma'am. Number five, lack of political education, so uninformed about voting process. So some Filipinos, particularly in rural areas, may not fully understand how election works or how to register and vote. So voter education in these areas are often inadequate, leading to confusion and low participation. Number six, distrust in the electoral system. Of course, concerns about cheating and fraud. So electoral fraud and cheating such as ballot tampering and vote buying have been significant issues in the Philippine election. So some voters feel that elections are manipulated, and as a result, they believe their votes won't matter. So this lack of trust in the system discourages participation of the voters. And number seven, economic pressure, prioritizing work over voting. So for many working class Filipinos, especially daily wage earners, taking time off work to vote may result in lost income. So given the high levels of poverty, some individuals may prioritize earning money over participating in the electoral process. And of course, vote buying culture. So while some may sell their votes, other may refuse to vote if they don't receive offers from candidate. So this phenomenon perpetuates a system where voters expect immediate benefits like money or goods rather than viewing voting as a civic responsibility. Next slide, ma'am. What is vote buying? So, vote buying happens when a candidate or a party offers money, gifts, or favors in exchange for a voter's support. This is actually an illegal act that distorts the democratic process. Vote buying is a serious issue in the Philippines, especially in the Philippines, that affects the integrity of elections and undermines the democratic process. And here are the key effects of vote buying. Number one, it undermines democracy. So when votes are bought, candidates win not because of their merits, policies, or visions for the future, but because they paid people to vote for them. So this distorts the purpose of elections and undermines the principle of free and fair voting. So voters lose trust in the political system when elections are driven by money rather than the democratic choice. So they may start believing that elections are unfair or predetermined, reducing public confidence in the government. And number two, this is very common, corruption. So politicians who engage in vote buying often see it as an investment, those candidates with a payback mentality. So after being selected, they may prioritize recovering the money they spent on buying votes often through corrupt practices like embezzling public funds or awarding contracts in exchange for kickbacks. And leaders who come to power through vote buying may not have the public's best interest in mind. So instead, on focusing on implementing effective policies or improving services, they focus on personal or political gains. So dito kasi sa vote buying, we cannot expect the politicians to buy or to spend for your vote and then you expect a quality public service. No, it's not. So after buying your votes, they focus on how to get back the money. So iniisip nila, paano mababalik yung perang ginastos ko? So usually this leads to corruption. So number three, perpetuation of poverty. Vote buying often targets poor and vulnerable communities. So while accepting money or favors may provide temporary relief, it leads to the election of leaders who do not prioritize policies that address the root cause of poverty. So as a result, poverty persists and these communities remain easy target for future elections. And citizens who accept money or favors in exchange for vote may become dependent on these practices. So these foster a culture of where people expect immediate short-term benefits from politicians rather than long-term solutions to community problems. Number four, erosion of political integrity. So honest, competent candidate may be discouraged from running for office if they believe they cannot compete with candidates who use money to win elections. So this narrows the field of candidates and limits the electorate choice to those who engage in corrupt practices. So vote buying often leads to further manipulation of the electoral process such as voter intimidation or electoral fraud. So it becomes a tool for those with financial power to control political outcomes, weakening the true meaning of democracy. So number five, degraded public service. When candidates win through vote buying, they feel less accountable to the people who elected them. After all, they didn't earn the people's trust based on their qualifications or platforms or merits. So this lack of accountability often results in poor public service, inefficiency, and lack of action on pressing community issues. So once in office, politicians who engage in vote buying may prioritize their personal financial gain over the needs of the people. So this leads to the misuse of public funds, neglecting vital services like education, healthcare, and infrastructure development. And so it leads down again to corruption practices. In number six, long-term damage to the democratic system. So in societies where vote buying becomes widespread, corruption may become normalized. This is very sad. So people may come to accept this as a regular part of politics, making it harder to reform the system or improve the quality of governance. So may mga tao na some people nga, they get excited when elections come. Why? Because elections means money to them. Kasi nga, yun, nagiging part na ng ating culture ang vote buying. So how do we combat vote buying? Number one is, of course, through education, like what we are doing right now. So the best way to combat vote buying is education. Through voters' education, citizens need to understand that their vote is valuable and should not be sold. Number two, empowerment. Voters need to be empowered to reject bribes. So communities should work together to raise awareness about the long-term effects of vote buying. And number three, strict enforcement of the law. So the government should strictly enforce existing laws that penalize vote buying. Citizens can also help by reporting instances of vote buying to the proper authorities. Iyan, sa conclusion na tayo. So as young voters, it is crucial for you to understand the power you hold in your hands. Voting is a sacred responsibility, and how you exercise that responsibility can shape the future of our country, the Philippines. So, elections are not just about choosing leaders, they are also about upholding the values of democracy, ensuring accountability, and creating the kind of society we all want to live in. However, the integrity of election is constantly challenged by practices, yun nga, like vote buying, which erodes the democratic process and harm our communities. So by staying informed, voting responsibly, and rejecting illegal practices, you can contribute to a better future for our country. So as students, you have an opportunity to spread these ideas in your communities. You can be champions of good governance not just by voting wisely but by educating others and promoting active, informed participation in our democratic processes. That's all. Thank you, guys. And I hope this lecture has inspired you to think deeply about your role in the electoral process. Always remember that your vote is your voice, so use it wisely. Ma'am, are we going to have an open forum po?
Yes po, attorney, we're going to have po a open forum. So guys, the floor is now open for us to ask our source speaker if you have any questions. Or if you are shy, you can type it in our chat box, then I will read it for you. Once again, thank you very much, attorney, for your very insightful presentation. Guys, do we have questions? Again, the floor is now open for your questions. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box or raise your virtual hands, and I will read it for you. Come on, guys. Shy yung mga students.
You can just type your question sa ating chat box and I will just answer it if nahihiya kayo. By the way, I would like to share while you are thinking of some questions. The last day of registration was on September 30. Ngayon, October na. So, wala nang registration.
Mm-mm.
Next registration probably is before barangay elections na. So, in our office, kahit tapos na yung registration, some people still come to ask for if there are any extension for registration ng mga voters. And sadly, wala na po because registration period matagal. It was, I think, 8 months. So, ang COMELEC, siguro, hindi na magbibigay ng extension for registration. So, I would just like to remind you guys na if you have the chance to register, just go. Don't wait for the last day to register. September 30, yun yung may bagyo. I think it was government offices were suspended. So, hindi sila nakapunta and they usually tell us na hindi ako nakapunta, hindi ako naka-register because of the typhoon. But no, that's not true. That's a lame excuse. Kasi our office was open. Open kami ng 8 months to cater registration. And some people, they did not come to us for registration and they waited for the last day. So I would just like to encourage you as young people. I know you are all busy na if registration comes, please come to our offices, the Office of Election officers in your town, in your city, in municipality. And madali lang ang registration. You just have to fill out a form and then kukunan kayo ng photo and signature and fingerprint and that's it. Wala pang 5 minutes.
Attorney, may question po dito.
Yes, this is
Coming
from
from Prof. Remalin De La Rosa, I think it's from her student. handling entrepreneurship student. Ma'am, is there a law po that penalize politicians who vote by? And what is the process on reporting such cases?
Yes, of course. Ma'am Remalin, we have a law that penalizes politicians who vote by. However, ganito kasi yan, um, we should catch those politicians or candidates who vote by. They must be caught in the act and there must be a solid evidence. However, kasi ang nangyayari sa atin, when politicians buy votes, minsan, this is so sad but this is the reality. Nandun pa yung mga pulis na nagbabantay. That's a sad reality. So how can we gather evidence if, yun nga, walang magre-report, walang manghuhuli. So we cannot elevate these practices to court. Yun po ang sad reality. Yun talaga ang flaw or hole ng process natin. It's very common ang vote buying sa ating town, even sa whole Philippines actually, especially sa parts ng Mindanao. However, yun nga, we do not have solid evidence. However, I would like to encourage you still na if you wanna report a vote selling and vote buying, go to the police. Yun po ang ating first process. Go to the police station, and report these kinds of illegal activity. And
Another, I'm sorry.
sila na po ang bahala.
Okay po. Thank you, Attorney. Attorney, meron pa pong question dito. Makapag-vote po ba yung mga nakapag-register lang ng SK na 18 years old po pero hindi nakapag-register sa national?
Yes, actually, if you are an SK voter before during the past elections, automatic na yung system natin, ililipat yung mga SK voters who turned 18 as regular voters into the system so you can actually vote. And just to be sure, guys, if you registered as SK in the past elections, you may go to the office of the election officer where you are registered and have your names checked para sure. But as far as I know, automatic na if you are an SK before and you turned 18 or you will turn 18 before or on the election day, you can actually vote because you are considered as a regular voter now of the Philippines.
Alright, so yan guys, you are automatically being qualified to vote for national election. Another attorney, consider po ba ang vote buying, J of Obra and agi J politicians nga agibunbunong money during election?
Yes, actually, it is considered as vote buying. That is against the law because sabi ko nga kanina, it distorts the democratic process. However, we cannot act on it directly. There must be a complaint among the citizens or among the candidates. We cannot motu proprio act on it. So if you have witnessed vote buying and vote selling, you can actually report this to the police because they are the persons concerned who can file a case to the fiscal or to the city prosecutor. Pero yun nga, sad reality again, um, electoral fraud or intimidation, it's actually a reality.
Another attorney, last two questions, I believe. Poverty is rampant nowadays, even if they don't want to accept the money from vote buying. But it is only the choice they have to get by with her daily needs. How should we educate them who's less fortunate po? Parang ang sinasabi attorney is wala siyang choice. And so how do we educate them? Yung mga less fortunate.
My personal take on this, no, we always have a choice. If you can actually weigh the dignity, it all boils down to the dignity. If you have actually a strict and sharp dignity that you don't want your vote to be sold, then no matter how much they offer to you, then you will not accept the bribe. You will not accept the gift. You will not accept any consideration from the politician. However, if nag-give in ka sa kanilang vote buying, then you question your dignity. After all, it starts among us, not with the politician, but we people. As we are voters, we are the one putting them in their position. So kahit naman if ayaw mo and if they give you something, pag ayaw mo talaga, they cannot buy your vote. They cannot buy your vote. So sa dignity na lang, sa dignity tayo magkakatalo.
All right, thank you, Attorney. Another question coming from our student po. If we aim for good governance, why do they still allow convicted person to file COC law po?
Yes, that's a very good question. However, in our constitution, there are qualifications. It is very specific talaga doon, yung mga qualifications ng people who can run for a certain positions. And unfortunately, wala doon yung requirement that those people who are convicted cannot file their COC or cannot run for any public position. That is, again, very sad for us. So before we can actually we can actually tell people that they cannot run for public position, we have to amend the constitution. Kasi wala naman sa constitution that you cannot run if you are a convicted person. So we
Alright.
cannot do anything about it. Siguro sa Congress na lang. So, yeah.
Yes. Another attorney, ma'am, yung mga politician po considered as government employee, bakit po hindi nila makapasa ng civil service po while other employees like aid, admin assistant is required po? Thank you. Coming from student po ng Marketing Management.
Thank you for that very good question. There are some types of government officials. One is those elected and the others are appointed. Doon kasi sa appointed officials, required po talaga ang napasado ka sa civil service examination, that you have the eligibility so you can hold that position. Unfortunately, sa mga elected officials, again, in the Constitution as required by law, hindi na kailangan ng civil service examination for the politicians po.
Ayan. So, I hope that our students are able to enlighten about this topic. Kasi I think, attorney, ito po yung lumalabas really recently sa social media, questioning government, running candidates running for position na wala namang pong civil service. So at least students now are being enlightened about this matter. Last na lang po, attorney, if okay lang.
Yes, ma'am, of course.
Can't the government daw po do anything on the guidelines of who can file for COC?
Of course, they can do something about it to impose other rules and regulations on who can file for a certificate of candidacy for a certain position. However, the first step is we need to amend the Constitution because we are following the Constitution. Any other laws that we implement, it is based on the Constitution. So if the Constitution is not amended or revised, we cannot do anything about it yet. So first, yun nga, we have to amend the Constitution first. And that is the work of the Congress, the senators, and the members of the Speaker of the House.
All right. Wow. So that was very fruitful discussion. I think in our chat box po. Okay, attorney, last na lang?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay po. How about po if yung mga authorized personnel like police mentioned na pwedeng approach if may nakita na nag-vote by, kanino na po kami magsusumbong?
Ma'am, I think I did not understand the question.
How about po if yung mga authorized personnel such as the police na kanino na po kami magsusumbong? Parang sinasabi, attorney, kung yung police is involved, kanino pa po ba sila magsusumbong? Other than the police, is they are involved in the vote buying. Parang ganun yung pagkakaintindi ko po. Who else to ask or report the vote buying incident or a scenario, parang ganun.
I think if ganito yung nangyari, you mean if the police is also involved in vote buying or
Tama?
protecting the politician who is involved in vote buying? I think we can also ask the assistance of the barangay officials, and we also have other uniform personnel such as yung NBI natin. I think we can tap them and ask for help, ma'am.
Alright. I hope yun po yung the way I understand the question, yun yung question ng student ni Ma'am Rema.
Yes po.
I think wala na po, attorney. So again, thank you very much for that very fruitful discussion. Again, everyone I think is enlightened about matters on voters education. So